Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with authentic, heart centered experts about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate personal and professional change. Today's topic is how to stop hiding and be seen for who you are. And this conversation is worth your while. If you've been thinking about it for some time and now something's shifted and you're ready to discover and celebrate who you are, and you're tired of hiding and you want to get out of your shell, but you know you need just a little nudge to express your true self, even though it's scary. I'm your host, Linda Bucher, speaker and master coach, and I believe that each one of us has unique gifts to share with the world and that you are here to make a big, beautiful difference and big, beautiful ripples in the world that no one else can make. My gifts and my purpose lie in helping smart, heart-centered leaders and the organizations who support them to make a splash that ripples positively in the world. And this show is one of the ways that I make a splash. I bring you informative conversations with heart-centered guests, experts who are making ripples of their own to better educate and empower you to make a splash. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Caro Arias of Descalza, who is making positive ripples in a really unique way. She creates unique and bold statement pieces, we're talking fashion here, that are inspired by her community. Basically, she uses fashion to educate and inspire others. So hello, Caro. How are you today?
Hey, Linda, I'm good. How are you?
Really good. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and who you serve and how you're making positive ripples in the world?
Yes, of course. So I am Carolina Arias, and I usually go by Caro. Um, and I'm the founder of Descalza. So Descalza is a made-to-measure clothing brand where we collaborate with artisans from Latin America, and there we make these beautiful hand-woven fabrics. We bring them here to North Carolina, my second home. And here we work with seamstresses to create bold and colorful statement pieces that are just a reflection of our story of, being part of communities that we identify with.
Well, that is very beautiful. Very beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about our topic today. So it's about, how to stop hiding and be seen for who you are. You are an immigrant, and you mentioned something to me when we were talking earlier. You said, as immigrants, the people and the places that you identify with don't necessarily identify with you. You're integrated, you're in two cultures at the same time. Let's talk about the what happens with that whole how do I be who I truly am when I've got this going on? Can you talk a little bit to that point?
Yeah, so in Spanish, we actually have a saying that's called ni de aquí, ni de allá, which means not from here nor from there. And I feel, as an immigrant, my mother brought me to this country when I was 2 years old. But she was very good at basically making sure that I remembered and always celebrated my Salvadorian roots. And so I grew up in a world where basically outside of my home, I was learning about the American culture. I was going, to school, learning English, learning everything, American history, adapting myself to a lot of traditions that we have here. But then the minute I would step inside the house, my world completely changed. The TV or Spanish, most likely novelas playing, some Spanish soap operas. My mom was cooking something. Most of the time it's like beans and rice, arroz con pollo. And so, once I kind of graduated from high school, left my little town, I started realizing that a lot of times, when we are very proud of who we are, uh, that doesn't necessarily translate in the sense of those communities are proud of who you are as well. And a way that I can explain this is that, for example, here in the States, if someone looks at me, they automatically think that I'm from somewhere else. And, they can hear my Spanish, they see my super curly hair. And so here, I'm not American enough because I'm not born here. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I see where you're coming from. And so then I go to El Salvador. That's where I was born. But there, the minute I step outside the airport, people already know that I wasn't raised there. My Spanish is too broken. I say too many ums and you know, basically say words in English but with a Spanish accent. And so they're from there in El Salvador, they're like, oh, like you're not from here. Eres americana, you're American, you're gringa. So it's this constant battle of no matter, what age you are, you're always, being thrown back and forth. And I realized like, so many other people, so many immigrants face this, if they're coming from Latin America or not, just any parts of the world, they get here to the States and it's just like this ongoing feeling of like, okay, well, where do I go?
Right. And so it's a matter of identity. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients, I'm working with identity shifts that happen through circumstance. So you get married, you get divorced, you have a baby, you lose your job, you get a new job, you move to another city. These are some really big, giant changes that happen that throw us into an identity shift. Now, our true selves are always there. The essence of who we are does not change based on the circumstances. However, our roles and responsibilities change. So we have an identity shift at that point. And of course, a lot of people have heard of this midlife crisis, identity crisis, which is not a crisis. It's basically an awakening. Unless you don't know it's an awakening, then it can feel very much like a crisis. Went through one of those my own. But this identity shift, and I really love that you brought up that neither here nor there. That's a liminal phase where we're on the threshold. We experience in that very personally. And we know we can't go backwards when we're going through an identity shift. It's absolutely impossible to go backwards. But the forward is so unknown and we don't know who our identity is going to be. So for me, one of my big identity shifts was when my husband passed away suddenly in his sleep. So here I am, a sudden widow, a sudden single mother. I had no idea who I was becoming. I had no idea who it was going to be. All I knew is I couldn't go back and be a wife anymore, and have, right. This was just not a thing. And so it's really scary to not know the direction that you're heading. Really scary. And it's really scary because who we are, what we wanted when we were 20 versus 30 versus 40 versus 50 versus I'm just about 60, it keeps changing. So it's really scary. And I can see that, like, I know what that your mother, you mentioned to me earlier, and I think you should tell a little bit story about how scary it was for your mother, to bring you to this country, knowing that this was, probably going to be the case, that it wasn't going to be like a super quick fit, and should it be like what about preserving and celebrating the history and the tradition, which sounds like she's done very beautifully. So let's talk a little bit about the fear of stepping into who you are and then the fear of showing it to the world, because that's very scary.
Yeah, my mom, like, now I'm a mother, I have two little ones too. And the amount of fear that she had when she was like 30 years old. She's like exactly the age that I am today. She made the choice of leaving everything in El Salvador. And, the circumstances in El Salvador were very bad. Basically there was no future for my brother and myself. And so she left all of that and came to this country, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, not knowing who was going to be here to help her, if there was anybody going to be, like, if anyone was going to be here to help her. She didn't care about those questions that were unanswered. She just went through it because she loves, my brother and myself that much, that she was willing to face fear and put it to the side and just keep going. And so I think that, just having her story is something that I'm constantly thinking in my story, right? And, this can be as simple as, when it comes to fashion, when it comes to telling your story, when it comes to the clothing, the skin that you choose to put on every single morning when you're getting dressed, put fear to the side and tell your story, put that, those pair of jeans that you've been wanting to wear for a really long time, but you're just so self-conscious about it. Like, who cares? Like, if you feel beautiful and confident, put it on, and it's gonna show. That's what's gonna come through. That's what's going to shine through is that confidence. And so I think, yeah, like just thinking about my mom and having her as an example is just like, just put fear to the side. It's going to be there. It's not going away. So might as well live with it, put it on the side and just keep going.
Absolutely. And you know what, Caro? I love that you brought up love. Love is the antidote to fear. We cannot be both in love, and feeling fear at the same time. It's the love that will override the fear so often. And that was the case with your mother. And when it comes to showing our true selves, it starts with self-love. We've got to love who we are and feel that we matter. And it's when we show our true selves, that feeling of confidence that comes with it, that boldness of this is who I am. First of all, yes, it's scary, but second of all, it's easier. It's actually easier than that internal struggle we have of worrying about what other people are going to think. Are other people going to judge you? The answer is yes, of course, always. People are doing it all the time. The real question is, will I allow that to matter to me? Because people's lens of judgment is really self-judgment reflected out. And so when people are showing their true selves through fashion, and we're going to talk more about how you're doing this in the world, because it's so beautiful and so cool. But when people show their true selves through fashion, the haircut, their, tattoos, piercings, or even the way they speak, what they're all about, how they show up in the world, what they write about, whatever, when they're doing this, it can only be done when you have self-love and when you give other people permission to think what they want to think about it, because that's not your business. We can't control how other people perceive us. And we can complain about it, but that's outside of us. So we have no control. So why would we waste our energy on something that we have no control over? Like, oh, people don't accept me in this community or that community. When it's so much easier to accept others not accepting you, even though I'm not saying that's right by any means. It certainly is not, in my own opinion, but it's so much easier to stomach when you allow, right? And that's different than tolerate. Allow people to be in their own fear, because usually this thing that happens when people are not accepting is because they're in fear. That's why they're judging. They're in fear. That's their history. Their own insecurities come to light. It's really never about us. So it's a really interesting way to move through fear, is to recognize that all that stuff I'm afraid of is not even about me. That's about them. And if I can allow them to be in that fear position they're in, allow those other people to just be who they are, where they are in life, then it's easier for me. And, when people, like, I used to have like this cool blonde streak in my hair. And I stopped doing it because it was kind of making my hair fall out a little bit. Otherwise, I would so have the colors back in there. Sometimes it was pink, sometimes whatever. And, some people would say, you're too old for that. That looks stupid on you. Right. And what is up with that thing? So, Cruella de Vil, like all these hilarious things, and, it was just like, it felt okay to me because I was expressing my true self, which was, I got a little bit of spunk in here. I'm pretty fun and funky, and I'm not taking everything so seriously all the time. Same with like all my little spikes that I have up here all the time, and like, and it's okay if you don't get it, and it's okay if that makes you afraid, right? That's all right. So it's okay. So, this fear thing, there's ways, it's not just as quick as like, oh, get over it. It's how do we move through it? And that's one of the ways we move through it, is to love ourselves enough and give other people permission to be where they are. And then it's a little bit easier for us to show a little. So it's a cool thing. So let's talk about how you're doing this, helping people to express their true selves through fashion.
Yeah, so what I've done is basically try to create a space, and in that space there's a bridge. And in that bridge, me, a visual learner, this is how I speak. It's a bridge between the US in all of Latin America, from the top of Mexico to the bottom of Argentina. And what we do is we work with the artisans that are in Latin America, and together we create these fabrics. We use a lot of traditional techniques that our indigenous ancestors used to do back in the day. And so they create these fabrics. They use a lot of the processes that are sustainable and conscious of the earth and our Mother Nature. And after those fabrics are made, then they're brought here to the US, and specifically to North Carolina. And here we work with a lot of local seamstresses who work with these fabrics. And this is how we create what I call statement pieces, because a lot of these pieces are colorful, they're bright, they have a lot of stripes. Some of them are even, have this like tie-dye look. And I call these statement pieces because when you wear something that we make, people are going to look at you and they're going to compliment you, just because you're going to stand out. Like, where you are, whether you're at a restaurant or you're just out in the public walking around, you're at a park, you're going to stand out because these colors are so beautiful and so rich. People are going to compliment you, and it's just going to be this feeling that you're going to have inside of not only confidence but also like, oh my goodness, like someone just said something about your clothing. Now you just created an opportunity to tell them a little bit more about who you are, a little bit more about these fabrics, and like, why are you wearing what you're wearing? So it's these are great conversation starters too.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think a way to move forward, because I like to take it in tiny little bites, because no one's making big giant change and stepping out and saying, here world, here's who I am, like all at once. That's way too scary. So we got to take it in little tiny bites. And so to look at these beautiful fabrics that you are bringing in, and say, when your body goes ooh, right, then your brain goes, well, I can't wear that, right? But if you feel that ooh, if you feel that pull, that means it's in alignment. It resonates with who you are. It's something that it feels like beauty to you, right? So we're bringing these fabrics in. And so that's the first little tiny step, like what makes you go, ooh, right? And then, maybe the next thing is like, where could I wear something like that? I was trying something on last week. I was shopping with my daughter and I found it was a gown. It just looked like it came out of the 1970s. It was like kind of long sleeve, poofier, like a wrap front and a full bottom. And it had like a whole under, it was fuller in the skirt and the bottom. It had like an extra layer underneath there. And it was very, very splashy and colorful. And because my personality is splashy and colorful, I just naturally was like drawn to it. And I'm like, oh, I could so get away wearing that. Like I could so wear that. My daughter's like, yeah, you could. She wouldn't be caught dead in it, but she's like, you could totally. And I tried it. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I couldn't find a place to wear it, or else I would have bought it, because it was just like, I didn't have like an event. It's not like something you're not wearing gowns, walking around all the time, but it just was like, at first I went, ooh, and then I tried it on. And I was like, where might I wear this? So it's like, let's try to find some little tiny steps. Sometimes it's a matter of just owning something, right? Just like, I'm going to put that in my closet because I'm going to find a place to wear that. And it's going to be a place where I feel safe. Or where I don't know anybody, so I don't care if they're judging me. Just, I don't know anybody there. I'm going to go. So that's, there's a couple little things that people can do to feel comfortable. So I love that what you're doing is multifaceted. You are helping people to express who they are. You're helping them do it through art and beauty. You're helping them to preserve. You're helping anyone. They as customers are also helping you to preserve the culture and history. They're supporting the integration of immigrants like yourself who um, are celebrating and living in both cultures simultaneously, right? So it's such a unique way that you are making ripples in the world. And I absolutely love it. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we hang up?
Yeah, I think we're always pivoting, we're always growing, and so we're actually in the middle of releasing a new collection. So I would strongly advise for you to go to our website, descalza.co. You can see some of our pieces on there already. Get a little bit more of a look of what we talk about when we're talking about bold statement pieces, and yeah, and subscribe to our newsletter so I can let you know, and you can find out when we have the news collection available. Another thing that I wanted to add is, because these fabrics are so rich, we're very intentional about when we're creating something. So what that means is that we don't carry an inventory. We produce the clothing after the customers put in her order, and so because your piece has not been made, this gives you the chance to give us your measurements. So that's something, going back to what we were talking about in terms of fit, in terms of confidence, in terms of fear. Sometimes what we're buying just doesn't fit us. Like, the fashion industry has so many problems, so many mistakes. They're kind of outdated in a lot of places. So we're over here like, you know what? Like, not everybody's like a cookie cutter shape. Nobody, not everyone fits in like these little standard sizes. So if you want this skirt, send me your waist measurement, send me how long or short you want it, and we're going to make it for you in the way that you want it to be made. So it's such a, and, we've done it in a way where it's not going to be extra if you want to customize it and, make it more fitted, whether you get a standard size that we have, and we use our templates, or you want to, give us your measurements, it's going to cost you the same thing. So, I always encourage, like, go buy that tape measure, go grab your friend, watch one of our videos on how to measure yourself, and then send me your measurements so that we can make you this piece and be confident that you're going to wear it because it fits you.
Oh my gosh. I love that you brought that up. I can't believe we didn't talk about that earlier. It's so custom because we are unique, completely unique. Our shapes are unique. Certainly, nothing is one size fits all. And when we align ourselves, all right, I always say, like, when you wrap what you're doing and how you're doing it around who you are, happiness and success will meet you there. So let's talk about this literally. When you wrap around yourself and your clothes, around who you truly are, your true shape, right? Then you can feel a lot more confident, which is really a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, oh my gosh, that is so lovely. I always thought, especially when it comes to blouses, narrow shoulders, and I need a little bigger in the front than many of the dress forms might be. And I was like, can I just buy a blouse by my bra size? I would love this, and my waist size, like, then it could actually fit me, So yeah, that's a really beautiful thing that you offer. Oh, Caro, thank you so much for being here today, talking about how to overcome fear, how to be our true selves, and a way to actually do that in a way. And I do have one more question for you. These beautiful fabrics, can someone just buy a fabric, or can you make it like pillows and like, because my home is an expression of who I am. Absolutely. I design around and for me. It is a visual manifestation of who I am. That's how I design my home. And so if a fabric really called out for me and I was like, oh, that needs to be on my couch for sure. Can people also buy fabrics or commission having some home goods type made out of these fabrics?
Yeah, of course. What you can do is just send us a message, and what we'll actually do is create some sketches for you. So we'll go through the whole process as if it's a dress or a skirt that we're making for you, but instead we're making you some clothes for your home.
Love it.
And we'll also send over a fabric swatch book so that way you can physically touch the fabrics. And then if you need to coordinate with, anything else that you have in that room, you have the fabrics in your hands to be able to reference. So long story short, yes.
Well, that's really beautiful. And also it's beautiful about that. Like my best friend is a very gifted designer. And for designers to have that swatch book in their hands, because, a very good designer will design at home around who someone is instead of a cookie cutter design. Like I do this in all my houses. And that's what this person does that I'm speaking about. And she has with different clients brought their culture into their home because that's part of who they are. And she's designing the house around who they are. And so this would be a beautiful thing. And I am going to let her know about this because I'll be speaking with her very soon. So that's wonderful. All right. Okay. Well, that's our show. I would like to thank Caro Arias of Descalza for being here with us today and sharing so many beautiful things with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. And I also want to thank you, devoted listener, for sharing your time with us today. And once again, I am Linda Bucher, helping smart, heart-centered leaders and the organizations who support them to make a splash that ripples positively in the world. So until next time, please subscribe and make sure you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.